The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. The regular season is done, which means playoff time is here. We're talking regular season awards, the playoff races, and the weekly waiver wire ads and drops. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show.
Play ball!
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com, Righteous Felon Jerky, and Seat Geek. I'm your host, Vince Stover, and I am joined each and every week of the season by the senior writer at BellyUpFantasySports.com and an Angel Hernandez apologist. Just kidding. He's the one and only Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Enjoying the 3-day weekend, as I hope you are as well, and all the viewers out there are having a great weekend. And this is the weekend. Baseball, college football is trying to intrude, but baseball is still on the stage. So I'm very excited about getting into this.
Yeah, there's room for all, Kevin.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's what I found this weekend. Lots of football watching this weekend, enjoying a doubleheader sweep, Brewers over the Reds. They did lose today in extra innings. Kevin, we're wrapping up fantasy baseball regular season over the next couple of hours. And in 4 leagues that I'm in, I'm going to be the 2 seed. In 3 of those leagues, playoffs, and the 4 seed in the 4th one. First year of my fantasy baseball career where I did not miss the playoffs in any of the leagues that I was in. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I'm not. I'm in 2 leagues. I kind of minimized myself this year, but I made the playoffs in both. Of course, in this one, and I tied for the best record in a fantasy league in the league that I'm in. So I'm feeling pretty confident. We'll see how long that happens because I'm going up against Chase in the first round.
Yeah,
and so he's the defending champion. So, but I'm not shrinking violet. I'm coming after him. So we'll see what happens.
Well, and again, we got to thank Kevin. All year long, he piddled down there in the middle of the league for the sake of the show. He wanted to make sure we had good content. So he's like, it's not fair if both of us are at the top of the league. Like, someone's got to be down lower fighting for a playoff spot. Kevin took the bullet this year for us, and he still locked it up, made the playoffs, came into this last week locked in, so he didn't have to worry this week at all, which is nice. And yeah, we're gonna be doing playoff fantasy baseball over the next 4 weeks. The next 2 weeks in leagues who have 4 playoff teams. The next 2 weeks are as a matchup, and then leagues that are bigger. So in one league, I've got 6 teams in the playoffs. So I got the first round bye. Will not be participating this week. And so I get the week off. I don't like doing that, man. I lose my momentum, and I'm a little rusty when I come out the next week. So we'll see how that goes as well. And then I'm in a league, Kevin. I got my boys in a league for the first time this year, and we finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in that league. I'm pretty stoked about that. Four teams make the playoffs. 10. That's a 12-man league, and 12-man categories league. And so I'm pumped about that as well. That was a lot of fun with them. I'll get to go head-to-head against one of my sons this week in the playoffs as well. So that'll be fun too. But anyways, we're wrapping up the regular season, and that brings us to our first segment of the night. It's a segment we like to call our Fantasy Burner. Fantasy Burner segment is presented by SeatGeek. SeatGeek's where you go to get all of your tickets. So if you're headed to regular season or to postseason baseball, you go to SeatGeek.com. Going to college football, professional football, it doesn't matter. SeatGeek.com. Use the code BellyUpSports. You're going to get $20 off your purchase. Kevin, I looked at tickets for Friday night in Cincinnati when the Brewers won 14-0. I wish I would have gone.
Wow.
But I didn't.
Yeah, that would be a game to enjoy, no question.
Yeah. I did not go though, and I sat there thinking about it Friday night. I was like, man, I should have gone to this game. That would have been fun. But nonetheless, I checked them out. SeatGeek found good deals and good seats, all that good stuff. Just ended up not going at the end of the day. Our fantasy burner today, we're looking at the regular season fantasy awards. So we're going to look at MVP, Cy Young, rookie, biggest surprise and biggest disappointment. So by biggest surprise, we mean positive, and then and biggest disappointment. So let's start with MVP. I have a feeling that we're going to be pretty similar on these first two at the very least. We might get a little different on the other ones, but let's start with the MVP of the fantasy season. You think that should be?
I think that should be, well, it comes down to me between three players.
Okay.
Aaron Judge, who's hitting home runs, and Witt, who's just hitting, period. Yeah. And then you got Shohei Ohtani, who's doing things that have never been done before in the history of baseball. So those are my three guys. And this is a tough call. But I'm going to put Aaron Judge at the top. Whatever you want. The dude is hitting home runs. He's got 51, 123 RBIs, 105 runs scored, and he has 534 fantasy points. Yep. So and he was the 33rd overall pick in our draft. So that gives him some value to me right there. The other two guys were taken in the second round. And but it was a lot closer than I thought because Bobby Witt's got 522 fantasy points, so it's not like he's getting blown off the stage. Plus, he's hitting, 340? So those three guys battled for the top, but in the end, Aaron Judge is just having one of those magical seasons, and he was coming off that toe injury. Nobody knew what he was going to do, but I don't think anyone expected him to hit 50 home runs. So I'm going with him at my top.
So I was in a similar boat. For me, it was between Judge and Witt. I don't typically like to go with just the highest scorer. Just, that's not my sole thing that I look at.
Right.
And so I looked at the stats and everything. Both of them, obviously, great stats. And for me, the tipping point was Judge drafted 33rd. Bobby Witt was drafted 17th. The value that fantasy owners got in Aaron Judge this year for him to perform the way that he did is massive. And he's batting 327. You said it, over 50 home runs, 7 stolen bases in there too. So it wasn't like he didn't have anything else going on for him.
Right.
He was the guy this year. And Bobby Witt was really good. Ohtani was good too. I just kind of avoided Ohtani since the last couple of years. He's been the obvious candidate. So I don't like doing that. But I went Aaron Judge also. I think ultimately, he's the highest scoring guy in fantasy baseball, along with the value and everything that goes with it too. So we're in agreement there with Aaron Judge at the top and Witt and Ohtani behind him there. All right, let's go to the pitcher side of things now. I'm interested to see which direction you went with this one. The Cy Young Award winner for fantasy baseball 2024 is?
Well, as close as that MVP race was nothing compared to what's going on in this category. Because this is a battle between Chris Sale of Atlanta and Tarik Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. So at one time, these guys were tied at 15 wins apiece. They had the same ERA. But Derek's pitched yesterday, so now he's 16-4, 201 strikeouts, 2.51 ERA, 0.93 WHIP. He's given up runs, 3 or fewer runs in 11 of his last 14 starts, 168 in the third inning. So then you look at Chris Sale. He's 15-3, 197 strikeouts, 2.58 ERA, 1.02 WHIP, and 2 or fewer runs the last 14 starts. So this dude has come down the stretch like nobody's business. And Atlanta is where they are simply because of him. And for points-wise, if that's important, Scobal's got 574 and Sale's got 526. As far as value, Scoble was taken, it's 22nd overall. That's one of the things that Elizabeth got right this year. And Chris Sale was taken 101 overall. So, but even with that value of Chris Sale's name, I think that Tarik Scoble was the pitcher. He's been the pitcher all year. So I'm going with Tarik Scoble as my Cy Young Award winner.
Yes, I'm going to agree with you. It's between the same two guys for me. Also, here's what gets me for Scoble. First of all, he pitches for the Detroit Tigers. So the Detroit Tigers are currently 70-68, which isn't a horrible record. But they're out of the playoffs as it currently sits. They're technically in the wild card hunt. For him to have 16 wins and only 4 losses on a team with that record is incredibly impressive. And the Braves, granted, they're not drastically better record-wise, but to me, what Tarik Scoble's been able to do consistently throughout this year has been so impressive. He was a guy that got hype coming into the fantasy season, and I was not on board with it. Man, I was not on board with it. He proved me wrong. He's got over 200 strikeouts, and he was drafted 22nd overall, but I think he lived up to that draft status as well. Leading in fantasy points on the pitching side of things. Also, to me, that one was, I'm happy for Chris Sale. I actually put him down in the surprise category as well as a candidate there. And so we'll talk about him again at that point. But Tarik Scoble for me is definitely the pitcher of the year. I mean, the Cy Young guy for fantasy baseball. Any fantasy owner that had him on their team is very pleased with what they've gotten out of him and what they're still getting out of him, because coming into the playoffs, his last game against Boston, 8 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts, and only 1 earned run, 33 fantasy points. Like, that's what you want to see heading into the playoffs. And he has not slowed down here at the end of the season either. So, yeah, I'm with you. Tarik Scoble, congratulations. Unanimous Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show Cy Young winner. So congratulations to him. I know he's watching. All right, let's get into the rookies and start with your candidates for rookies. Who did you put down as candidates?
Candidates, I have Jackson Merrill, who you were on right from the very start, and Paul Skeens, of course. I slotted Shota Imanaga. Okay. But he's going to come in third and so I just mentioned him because he was under consideration. So it comes down to Jackson Merrill and Paul Skeens to me of who is the rookie of the year in fantasy baseball.
All right. So I'm going to throw another name in there with you. I'm with you. Merrill and Skeens are the top 2. We'll talk about which order we put them in. The third name that I put in is Tyler Fitzgerald, San Francisco Giants. Now, he has not played all season. And so I can't give him the win, but he has been so impressive here at the end of the season since he's been playing consistently. He's got 14 home runs, 14 extra base hits, 16 stolen bases, 30 RBIs, 17 walks, a 2.8 WAR, and hitting 291 on the year. He's got 152 fantasy points. So for me, I wanted to mention him because this stretch run of the season, he has been helpful, and he's definitely benefited fantasy teams as well. And I think it's been impressive what he's done here at the end. And I put Jackson Chourio on the list too. I put him as third or fourth on the list as well. His consistency definitely showed up more in the second half of the season than it did in the first half of the season as well. But yeah, so Jackson Merrill, he's the Padres shortstop / outfielder eligibility, which provides value in and of itself. And then Paul Skeens comes in and is exactly who everyone hoped he would be in Pittsburgh as well. So who did you go with for your rookie of the year?
Well, I was all prepared because I thought Paul Skeens came in to the league much later than Jackson Merrill did. But then I looked and saw that he came in May.
Yeah. So
he wasn't that far behind. So I went with Paul Skeens. He was just a guy that you couldn't ignore. 8-2, 2.33 RA, 0.97, 0.95 WHIP, and 370 fantasy points. So, and the fact that they're starting to scale back on him has no bearing whatever on this award right here, because that's whoever owns them, if they have them in the playoffs, that's their problem now. But for the regular season, I'm going to go with Paul Skeens, just barely over Jackson Merrill, who's really hitting the ball really well. So he's not wilting under the pressure. But I'm going to go with Paul Skeens as my rookie of the year.
I like it. I mean, you look at him, 109 innings pitched, 136 strikeouts, only 26 walks. It is truly impressive what Paul Skeens has done. There's no doubt about it. But I am going to go opposite of you on this one. I'm going to go with Jackson Merrill. I think the fact that he's able to add 320 fantasy points to a fantasy roster as a rookie. I'm trying to see real quick here. I thought I had it pulled up and then I didn't. Let's see here. He's a top 7 player at shortstop this year. And in the outfield, he's also a top 10. 9. Yeah, 9. So he's top 7 at shortstop, top 9 in the outfield, which is a loaded position. He's batting .290, 20 home runs, 28 extra base hits, 16 stolen bases, 77 RBIs, 24 walks, 90 strikeouts, a 3.2 WAR for San Diego. To me, I just think it's harder to tally up points as a position player than a pitcher. And although Skeens has been phenomenal and one of the top pitchers in fantasy baseball in his time there, I'm just impressed with what Jackson Merrill did. And again, it doesn't hurt that I had him on my team, so I'm a little biased towards them as well. I think they're both warranted. I'll go pitcher rookie of the year to Paul Skeens and offensive rookie of the year to Jackson Merrill this year. I've been impressed with Merrill, and he had his dips. Like, he wasn't early on, especially, he started off okay and whatnot, but he definitely found his rhythm now, and I love what he's doing. And so shout out to Jackson Merrill and his help in my fantasy team throughout this year as well.
Absolutely, because he has hits in 12 of his last 15 games. So he's standing strong, 4 homers. He homered today, as a matter of fact. So you couldn't argue either one of these guys. And it's going to be real interesting when it comes to who gets the actual rookie of the year, because both these guys are in the National League. Right. So one of them's going to have to win. So we'll be interested to see who the writers give this award to.
Definitely. All right, let's get into positive surprises fantasy-wise this year. Who are the guys that make your list of positive surprises?
Positive surprises, there are all kinds of guys that we could go with, but I narrowed my list down to 3, and that's Jurickson Profar, also of the San Diego Padres, Toscar Hernandez of the Dodgers, and Seth Lugo of the Kansas City Royals. And remember, Toscar Hernandez was a guy I was not high on coming into the season.
2 seasons in a row, for what it's worth.
Right. Yeah. That's absolutely right. So he was a surprise to me. I don't know if he was surprised to everybody else, but well, he was, because he was the 246th overall pick. Right. So nobody was falling all over themselves to get him. Jurickson Profar was a waiver pickup, and he was a starter in the National League All-Star game. Then you got Seth Lugo. He's slowed down a little bit in the second half, and people have dropped him. I picked him up in both leagues that I'm in. So we'll see how that works out. He's got 14 wins, 3.12 ERA, 470 fantasy points. But I'm going to go with Jurickson Profar as my surprise of the year. He's doing it. He's hitting 278, 21 homers, 81 RBIs, 79 runs. And so to come off the waiver wire and perform like that is impressive to me. So I am going with Jurickson Profar as my pleasant surprise of the year.
Yeah, Lugo made my list because he was also undrafted in our league, and he has been good. But like you said, he's had his moments that haven't been great. Chris Sale, like I said, he's made my list too. He's second place for me. Drafted 101st overall. There was just a lot of question marks. We didn't know what he was going to be coming into this year, and so that's just what it is at that point. For me, though, I'm with you. Jurickson Profar, undrafted. He's a number 5 ranked outfielder in fantasy baseball right now. You just can't overlook what he's done. And again, you look at San Diego, who really struggled early in the year to find their footing. Now they're rolling. They're a playoff team too. And Jackson Merrill and Jurickson Profar are big reasons for that. And both of those guys are reasons why fantasy teams are in the playoffs now as well. Jurickson Profar, you said it all, I think, but 278, he's batting 278, 21 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 81 RBIs, 6 runs. He went through a kind of an ugly stretch against St. Louis this past week, but 373 points, number 5 overall at the outfield position, cannot be overlooked. And so I'm with you. Positive surprise of the year, Jurickson Profar. Congratulations. A unanimous Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball show award winner.
I'm kind of surprised with that. I thought there would be some differences on that. I'm pleasantly surprised. So
yeah.
Glad to see that we're both on the same wavelength here.
If you go undrafted in fantasy baseball and you end up a top 5 at your position, that's a surprise. As big a surprise as you could possibly get. So, but Lugo, again, Lugo has been impressive. Kansas City has been impressive as well. And I think Chris Sale that's been a pleasant surprise, especially for a team decimated by injuries. To have Chris Sale be the consistent, that's a pretty big deal there as well. I will be shocked if our disappointment isn't the same, Kevin.
I will be too. I'll tell you right now.
I've got 3 guys, though. I got 3 candidates.
So, okay.
All right, I'll tell you who my candidates are, and then I'll let you go off on the winner of this award. So my 3 candidates are Matt Olson. Man, he was overvalued this year, did not perform. And you think about all the guys injured in Atlanta, how much they needed Matt Olson to be what he used to be. He was not this year. Not great. Xander Bogaerts. Neither of us were huge on Xander Bogaerts, but he's supposed to be better than what he's been this year. And when you look at guys like Jackson Merrill and Jurickson Profar performing, you look at Xander Bogaerts and say, what's wrong with you, man? Step it up.
Right.
The third candidate is a guy from Seattle by the name of Julio Rodriguez. Kevin, I'll let you speak now.
Okay, so the guys that you mentioned are disappointments, but none of them measures up to the disappointment. And just point out that this is a disappointment not because they were injured. Okay,
right.
So we're going to put that out because there were plenty of guys that were injured and disappointments, but that's not what we're talking about here. But Julio Rodriguez is the only guy. Those other guys you mentioned, you could have put Corbin Carroll in there as well, but he's the only guy I considered right from the very start because, if you remember, right from the very beginning of this, right from the beginning of the year, I looked at the rankings. ESPN had Julio Rodriguez ranked 34th, and I was like, what kind of nonsense is this? And I wrote my article saying, don't pay any attention to that. So he made me look like a horse's patootie, all right? So because of that, he is my disappointment. And I'm just going to throw this in here. He's got 184 fantasy points. These players scored more points than him. How about Yamir Diaz, a catcher from the Houston Astros, okay? Alec Burleson in St. Louis came, and he's been a great player for them, but he was a waiver wire pickup.
Yeah.
How about Brandon Nimmo of the New York Mets, okay? Outfielder and solid player, but should be nowhere near what Julio Rodriguez is doing. But and then how about Brenton Doyle of Colorado Rockies?
There we go.
I've been talking about how don't have this guy on your roster, but he has over 100 points more than Julio Rodriguez. So this guy has nosedive. I know he hit a couple home runs. Thursday he hit one. Friday he hit one. That's way too late in the game. Okay, so too bad, so sad. Go home, stay home. Okay, so disappointment of all time right here.
So he's still owned in 90% of leagues, by the way. People are not letting him go. Comparison to last season. Now he still has 25 games or something like that left in the season, but 2023, he had 32 home runs. He's at 13 right now. He scored 102 runs. He's at 52 right now. He had 103 RBIs. He's at 46 right now. 100, let's see here, 37 stolen bases. He's at 18 right now. Last year he hit 275. He's hitting 259. Let's see here. His slugger percentage last year was 485. He's at 373 right now. His WAR dropped over 3 points. He was at 5.8 in 22 and 23. He's at 2.2 this year. So Julio Rodriguez has dropped off so drastically. We did not see this coming. I was with you on the rankings sitting there going, it doesn't make any sense why people have them as low as they have them. And I don't know what they knew that we didn't, Kevin. I'm still just racking my brain trying to figure out what in the world did they know about Julio Rodriguez. But he is clearly, again, unanimous Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show award winner for the most disappointing fantasy player this season, Julio Rodriguez. We agree completely on that one, Kevin.
Right. And, ESPN had him, like as I said, ranked 34th. If he had been 34th overall player, people would have been much happier than when they are. But he had crash landed way below that. So nobody could have possibly seen this kind of performance from him coming.
Did you have any other names on your list, or was he the only one on your list?
He's the only one I considered. Like, he could have been the other guys, but no one. I mean, not Matt Olson, disappointment, of course, but nowhere near the level of Julio Rodriguez. So
I think Matt Olson has to be mentioned, but because he was in most cases a top 2 or 3 first baseman coming into this season and in the preseason rankings, and he did not finish anywhere close to that. That being said, though, he still is not as bad as Julio Rodriguez this year. There's no doubt about that. No. Well, if you want to go watch Julio Rodriguez in the final 25 games of the season, you can get your tickets at SeatGeek.com. Use the code BellyUpSports. You're going to get $20 off your purchase. And SeatGeek is the proud sponsors of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball's Fantasy Burners segment. All right, time to move on. Next segment, it's the call to the pin. Call to the Pin is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Join the flavor revolution. RighteousFelon.com. Use the promo code STOVE15. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. Today, I posted a stat that was Gary Sheffield posted on Twitter. Giancarlo Stanton just hit the first home run registered at 300 miles per hour on StatCast ever in all of Major League Baseball. Giancarlo Stanton has been better than we anticipated this year in fantasy baseball. But what do you think about that stat?
I didn't think a baseball could travel that fast. So, I'm thinking, somewhere around 105 miles an hour, something like that. This is 3 times as fast as that. So all you have to hope is that it didn't hit somebody in their noggin, because 300 miles an hour could do some serious damage. So I guess if that's all he put out, then nobody was hurt by the ball. So, points for that.
Dusty Baker's son makes his debut and gets his first hit in Washington a couple hours ago. Dusty Baker, I don't know how anyone could ever dislike Dusty Baker. That's a pretty cool moment. Dusty was there in the crowd for it as well. I thought that was pretty cool. First hits are always cool, but I don't know, when you got a legendary dad like that, that's a pretty awesome moment, I think.
It was, and not only was it his first hit, but it was his first pitch he'd ever seen at the major league level and got a base hit. And I agree with you, even though Dusty, managed the Giants, and but he was a Dodger as a player, so I gave him a little leeway on that one. So if you hate Dusty Baker, you need to check yourself, because he was a class guy as a player, manager, baseball man. So no problems whatsoever with Dusty Baker.
Yeah, we saw some fun plays this week, some nice snags in the outfield and other things like that as well, of course. But focus is all about the playoff races right now, and things are rolling along pretty well in the National League. Everything is pretty much as has been. The Mets are still a game and a half out of the wild card race. Braves, Diamondback, and Padres are in. Dodgers back up to 5-game lead in the division. Philly's still at 6 games, and the Brewers at 9-game lead over the Cubs. To me, the National League at this point has become pretty much, not much to talk about at this moment. But big series against me and Dad talked about this last week. Big series here to close out the season. Dodgers and Diamondbacks play each other. Diamonds and Padres play each other. Dodgers and Padres play each other. Everyone in that division is going to at least get one series. And I think the Diamondbacks and Dodgers may have two series against each other still. So that a lot can change very quickly in these division races. But overall, I feel like the 6 teams in the National League playoffs are pretty much set.
Well, just last week we talked about how divisions and they're starting to creep closer together. Well, those loosened up a little bit because the Dodgers won the first 2 games of their 4-game series. They lost today, but so they're 5 up, as you mentioned. The Padres are 5 back, and Atlanta was up 4-0 and Thursday on their game. They were that close to coming within 4 games. That's fallen apart a little bit. So I'm still. We mentioned Mets last week. I'm still not buying them, but they're still right there. But
yeah, they're on a 4-game win streak. But they, again, I just don't see them. I just don't see them jumping over the Braves.
I don't either. They're just a game and a half out, and then. When you talk about there's the Cubs, and somehow or another they're 3.5 out. So that's going to be. I don't see that maintaining. I don't know what in the world. Maybe the curse has let up a little bit on them, or maybe they're letting it up so they can really hammer it home. I'm not too sure on that one, but
here you go. You ready? This is it.
Okay,
I won't even play the music today. I'm going to predict the council curse is this. Okay. They get to, if they win the last game of the season, they get in the wild card, and then they lose the last game of the season. I hope they're playing the White Sox. Who are they playing at the end of the season? I'll look that up.
Okay, while you look that up, yeah. So that's going on in the National League, and as you mentioned, the Dodgers and Diamondbacks play again tomorrow. They'll close out their 4-game series, and there's some interesting games that are coming up this week. How about Kansas City? We're going to talk about them, the standings, but Kansas City was 3 innings away from sweeping Cleveland on the road. Now, all of a sudden, they can't win. But Cleveland and Kansas City start a 3-game series tomorrow. Boston, New York Mets start a 3-game series this week. This weekend, Minnesota and Kansas City play. The Cubs, maybe that will be the Yankees, are coming in there.
That's right.
Arizona and Houston play each other next weekend, as do Cleveland comes in to play the Dodgers. So but football and everything else, and people are gaga over that, and that's fine. But baseball is giving us things that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Cubs play the Reds their last series of the season at Chicago. So there you go. Council curses that. Comes down to the last game for the Cubs. All they got to do is beat the lowly Reds, and they make the playoffs. They're at home. What more could they ask for? And the council curse just strikes in full-fledged, and Chicago misses the playoffs, and there you go. I don't think it's going to be that close to the playoffs for them, but that would be a beautiful ending to the Cubs season for sure. American League. Let's go ahead and talk about that AL Central. The Royals on a 5-game losing streak are now 3.5 back. They were, right there.
They actually took the lead.
Yeah,
they won that 3rd game of the series, and so they were in the first place. But like I said, they haven't won since. Houston swept them right out. So it's
they signed Yuli Gurriel, right? So everything's changed. They've signed? They got Tommy Pham, right? Did they bring in Tommy Pham?
I did not see that. If that's in fact true, don't fall all over yourself about him. That's all I'll say about that.
Let's get this figured out. So yeah, Yuli Gurriel gets brought in. I thought they were the ones that got Tommy Pham also, but I could be. Yes. So they got Tommy Pham. Then they also got Yuli Gurriel. They activated Robbie Grossman this week as well. So yeah, they made a lot of roster moves this week. Well, that was all today, actually. That was done. Of course, Vinny Pasquantino He got a thumb fracture, so he went down this week, which stinks for fantasy baseball owners.
That's right.
But Michael Lorenzen went down on Wednesday to an injury also. So yeah, they got a lot going on right now. But yeah, not being able to win, this is kind of an important time of the year to win games, and Royals have struggled to do so. But Guardians back on top, 3.5 games up over Twins and Royals here. And I think the Astros got it locked up. They're 6 up on the Mariners. And we've already talked about Yankees and Orioles. They are what they are. It's going to be that way all the way through. So right now, Yankees, Guardians, and Astros are your conference winners. Orioles 4 games up on everybody. Twins and Royals in. Red Sox 4.5 back. They've lost 2 straight. Are the Red Sox going to try to make this something, or are we down? Do we have our 6 teams in the American League?
We talked about Boston before, and they've got the Mets, and so that's kind of a who's going to survive that? Because whoever comes out, let's say whoever wins 2 out of 3 of that series is still in it. Whoever loses 2 out of 3, I think, takes a step way in the back of the bus. So we'll know a lot more about both those teams by the time Friday comes around.
Yeah, hottest team in the American League right now is the Detroit Tigers. 8 of their last 10. They've been solid this week, where everyone else really, I mean, the Orioles were 500 this past week. They're 5, and there was Astros won 6 of their last 4. They're the closest to that 8 out of the last 10, 6 out of the last 10, excuse me. And the Tigers are 8 out of the last 10. So maybe the Tigers sneak back into this before it's all said and done, and they make a little hunt here at whether the Twins or the Royals drop off. That'd be kind of crazy if the Tigers snuck into the playoffs. They're still technically in the hunt.
They are, and I was with them earlier in the year, and then they kicked me to the back of the bus myself. So I'm not ready to climb back on board with them just yet. But it is very impressive. And there's Detroit. We'll get into the ads a little bit. There's a Detroit Tiger that will be added right there. So that's just a little throw, so you can know what's coming a little bit. And I don't know if you saw, we got to give a shout out to Billy Witt. He gave a shout out to us. So, Billy, how's it going? Glad you're joining us right now.
Yeah, no relationship to Bobby Witt, as far as I understand.
If there is a relation, Billy, you need to let us know that. So we expect to go out to dinner. Right.
Definitely. Okay. Let's see here. Let's talk about. Well, that's it. That's all I got. Anything else for this segment?
The only other thing I have is it's unfortunate that I'm going to be talking about this a little bit later, but Clayton Kershaw, who I said, hey, everybody on the Clayton Kershaw bus, well, it's broke down. Okay. And I said, everybody on the Michael Lorenzen bus, it broke down.
Yeah.
So those are 2 unfortunate occurrences that happened this past week.
Injuries have been tough here at the end of the season for fantasy baseball people, especially. All right, that's our call to the pin. Make sure you check out Righteous Felon Jerky, righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15 at checkout. You get 15% off your purchase. And if you check out my Instagram page at Sports Stove, I posted a little appreciation post earlier this week about Righteous Felon Jerky as well. You can go check that out. All right, let's head into segment number 3, our playoff ads and drops. Our fantasy focus is presented, as it has been all season, by BellyUpFantasySports.com. There are tons of articles coming out these days with fantasy football advice and things like that. Still some fantasy baseball here and there as well. There will be hockey stuff and basketball stuff when those seasons come around. Check it out, BellyUpFantasySports.com. And, of course, it's where you can catch all of Kevin Wilson's articles as well. Kevin, let's run through the drops. Let's make this fair. And then
I didn't go crazy on the drop, so I thought we'd focus a little more on the pickups.
Okay.
So leading off is a guy that's I drafted, unfortunately for me. Okay, but I've dropped him, but he's still at 57.4% rostered. I don't understand this, and I'm talking about David Bednar.
Oh, yeah.
Why in the world is he on almost 60% of rosters? And did you see what he did the other day? In 2/3 of an inning, 2/3, 5 runs. 5. Okay? Negative 18 fantasy points. I'm sorry. There's no, as we mentioned, we're going into the playoffs. You have no need to have a closer on your fantasy team who is giving you negative 18 fantasy points. So I beat this drum into the ground. I'm going to continue to do so. He does not need to be on your fantasy roster. And the Pirates aren't playing anywhere near, competitive baseball anyway. So cut this guy. Please don't do that to yourself.
Well, since we're on relievers, I'll go with another one. Cincinnati's Alexis Diaz. 3 of his last 5 games have been negative outings. Negative 13 points against Pittsburgh. Negative 12 points against Oakland. And negative 3 points against Milwaukee. Only 179 fantasy points overall. He's got 24 saves. But at this point, he's a nightmare. You don't want to be there in the playoffs with Alexis Diaz as being your guy you're trying to use as a reliever. So I say cut him. Get him off your playoff roster. There are plenty of other guys out there you can get fantasy points from when it comes to relievers. Bednar and Diaz should not be 2 of them. So let them go. There's our relievers. I didn't know we were going to talk to relievers today. There you go.
I didn't know either, but even, because I'm on Facebook, obviously, and somebody on there posted this. Why is he still the Pittsburgh Pirates closer? And I came in and said, even better question, why is he on 59% of rosters? Someone explain this to me.
Yeah.
They got to pay David Bednar money. We don't have to have him on our fantasy team.
That's right. So, that's right. All right, who else you got?
Okay, so I mentioned him a little bit ago, and that's Clayton Kershaw. And he's got a bad toe. Okay, so he went on the IL. And there's nobody out there, I'm sure, that's qualified for the playoffs who has an open IL spot. If you do, I guess you could slide him in there. But who has that? If you don't keep him on your roster. You need every roster spot in the postseason. So you got to let Clayton Kershaw go, even though I just said last week I believed in him. But all it took was 1 start, 1 inning, toe problem, out. Don't know when he'll be back. Then the Dodgers' entire starting rotation is on the IL now. Yeah. So what are they going to do? Well, that's their issue, but you don't need to play Kershaw on your fantasy team if you don't have an IL spot. So don't do that to yourself.
All right. It brings me a lot of joy to bring up this next guy. Starting pitcher for the Texas Rangers. I have tried to warn people, don't put this guy on your roster.
You have.
And every year, Kevin's like, no, it'll be okay. Check out this matchup. No, it'll be fine. He's not that bad. Well, ladies and gentlemen, John Gray should not be on your fantasy roster in the playoffs. Okay. Let's look at a few things. Now, he did play the White Sox back on July the 23rd, and he went 7.2 innings, 5 strikeouts, 29 fantasy points. Whoop-dee-doo. All right. Since then, his August starts against Pittsburgh. He went 2 innings, 1 earned run, 2 strikeouts. He was yanked 4 fantasy points. Against Cleveland, he went 2 innings. That's right. 2 innings, 7 earned runs, 1 strikeout, negative 14 fantasy points. And in his last matchup, it's a great matchup. Let's start John Gray against Oakland. No. 4.2 innings, 4 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 5 fantasy points. This week, he goes Wednesday against the New York Baseball Yankees. You do not want to run John Gray out there. He's 19% owned. He should be 1.9% owned. John Gray, get off my fantasy team. Get off my site. I want to see you. I spit in your general direction. John Gray is a must cut if he's on your roster right now.
Let me just say in my defense, I don't think, I have to go back and look. I don't think I've mentioned John Gray this year.
That is not true.
Okay.
There has been at least twice. I know once, I think twice, that you put John Gray on your ads this year.
Okay, even if that's the case, that was quite some time ago. So he's nowhere
and
near.
And it was matchup oriented. I'll give you that, Kevin. It was always matchup oriented with John Gray. The guy cannot be on my roster.
No,
I cannot stand
there's fantasy matchup or no. He's nowhere near a fantasy team on my side either. So No worries
right.
there. So
Who's
last
your
guy
third?
I'm going to go with is a Boston Red Sox, and that's I hope I'm saying this right, Ceddanne Rafaela. Okay.
Okay.
And it's nice he plays outfield and shortstop. That's really nice. But he has negative fantasy points in 5 of his last 8 games.
Oof.
So, and he's facing the Mets in New York. That's a pretty good pitching place. So I don't like that coming up this week. If he does well, you can maybe swing back by and get him back on your team. But I'm not believing in him this week. First week of the fantasy playoffs. If there's a player you don't believe in, don't have him on your fantasy team. I do not believe in Ceddanne, if that's how you pronounce it, probably isn't. But Rafaela of the Boston Red Sox, nowhere on my fantasy team.
Okay. Chase, if you're listening, turn off the volume for a second.
Yeah, please
The next cut and drop is Keibert Ruiz, catcher from the Washington Nationals, owned in 48% of leagues, including the defending champion Chase Thornton roster at the moment. Let's see here. His last 4 games have been negative point outings. His last 5 games have been 0 or negative point outings. He has not got a base hit in the last 2 series that he's played in. And we've said it over and over and over again. There are catchers available in every league that have good matchups and good opportunities. Keibert Ruiz is looked at as a guy that's supposed to be good. And coming into the year, a lot of people had as that like middle tier kind of catcher. Well, he's batting .216, only 12 home runs on the year, only 46 RBIs, 182 fantasy points. He's not hot right now. There's no reason for him to be on your playoff roster. Keibert Ruiz is a must drop right now. Again, there's lots of catchers out there. And then, Kevin, I've got one more guy, and I hesitate to bring him up. He's owned in 83.8% of leagues.
Okay.
And he plays for the Texas Rangers. And I like the guy, but Adolis Garcia has been stinky upon stinky as of late. He did score 4 fantasy points today, which is the most points that he's scored since August the 18th. Since August the 18th, when he scored 10 fantasy points against Minnesota, he went -1, -3, 2, 3, 0, -1, 1, -2, -1, -1, 0 before hitting 4 points today. Against teams like Oakland and the White Sox, negative points, not good.
Wow.
And I hesitate to drop a guy that's 83.8% owned, put him in the Julio Rodriguez category. Like it's the playoffs, man. You cannot have this guy on your roster and expect to win playoff matchups right now. I think it's time to go ahead and cut loose Adolis Garcia.
We could have talked about him possibly in our disappointment section as well, because he's been really disappointing. And I know what I speak because I live in Texas Ranger area.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's shown up in the paper not in a positive way quite a few times this year. So even 80 or whatever percent, right? If let him go.
Yeah.
Playoffs. It's no time, as we've discussed, to keep guys on your fantasy team who are not producing.
Right. All right, let's go ads for this week. First round of the playoffs. Who you adding?
Okay, so you just talked about a catcher. I've got a catcher ad, okay, that I'm going to lead off with, and that's Connor Wong of the Boston Red Sox.
Okay.
He's at 18.9% rostered, but the reason why I'm bringing him up isn't necessarily because he's a catcher. He is. He's a catcher at first base, and but the Red Sox announced this week that they're going to move him to second base.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if that holds, he was back at catcher today, but if he holds and they play him at second base, then you don't have to worry about having him shuffle in and out of your lineup, because as a second baseman, he'll be in that lineup pretty much all the time. So you can have one catcher on your roster, which is what I like myself. Okay, and the guy's hitting on top of that, 283, 12 homers, 46 RBIs. He's got 6 steals, which is, amazing for a catcher. Hits in 5 of his last 7 games. So if you're looking for a catcher, and who isn't at this time of year, and Connor Wong is a guy that I really, really like, especially if he keeps playing second base. He locks down your catcher position for the entire postseason.
Yeah, and he locks in value for next season as well.
Got that right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and I think I saw somewhere there's been 36 different starting second basemen for Boston since 2000. I forget what year they posted. It's a bunch of second basemen though have started games in Boston. That's wild. I like that pickup though. That's a good one.
So no
sure.
Dustin Pedroia is coming down the highway for Boston.
Right. I go with the Miami Marlin this week, Connor Norby, and he won't be my only Miami Marlin this week. But Connor Norby, he is a second base and outfield position guy. He's batting .263, 5 dingers, 2 home runs, or excuse me, 2 stolen bases. But here as of late, against Arizona, 3-game series against Arizona, he got 6 fantasy points. Against the Cubs, he had 19 fantasy points. Against Colorado, 16 fantasy points. And then against San Francisco yesterday, he had 4 fantasy points. Connor Norby's been playing some good baseball. He's getting everyday at bats. He did not play. No, they still play tonight. But that being said, Connor Norby's a great little sneaky ad. He's 14% owned right now in leagues, and giving you that second base and outfield gives you a lot of flexibility there as well. So I like the Connor Norby ad right now.
Okay, so I'm gonna go. You can accuse me of being a homer if you want to. That's fine with me. But Tommy Edman of the Dodgers, I spoke of him before, and second short outfield, and he's at 22% rostered, but he's hitting .295. Okay, 2 hits in 3 of 4 games. Okay, 2 hits in 3 of 4 games. He has 2 stolen bases in that same time frame, and he's got the versatility that I like a whole lot. And they're playing the Dodgers. They're going to have him in their lineup, and so fortunately for them, they don't have any problems with their hitters. Did you see the other day they hit back-to-back home runs?
Yeah.
To start that game for the first time ever in their franchise history. But anyway, but Tommy Edman is a part of that. So if you're looking for somebody that will give you some versatility, and who shouldn't be looking for that, I like Tommy Edman a whole lot.
Very good. I'm going to go with a guy I actually mentioned several times throughout the season to keep an eye on, and they finally called him up a couple of weeks ago. Junior Caminero from Tampa Bay. He is owned in 22.8% of leagues. But since I talked about him so much this season, and I hadn't mentioned him since he got brought up, against the Dodgers back on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of August, he went 8 points, 11 points, and 2 points in that series against the Dodgers at LA. Against Seattle, he struggled. He had 2 negative outings plus the 3-point day to close out the series. Then against San Diego, he's currently sitting at 11 total fantasy points in a 3-game series as well. Another home run yesterday also. Listen, he's the future of Tampa, and he came up at the right time finally. Actually came up probably late, but nonetheless, he's there at Tampa, and he's looking pretty decent to get things rolling here on the season for him, throwing in a couple stolen bases, hitting the ball at .262. I love Junior Caminero, and I think he's if you need help at third base or shortstop, I think he's a good addition.
Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the pitching side. And David Peterson of the New York Mets, he's at 20.4% rostered, which is amazing to me because he's 8-1, 2.83 ERA. He's given up 2 or fewer runs in 12 of his last 14 starts. So this is a dominant run that few pitchers can match. And he pitched against Arizona in his last start. Arizona leads the league in runs, okay, first of all. But 7 innings, 2 runs on 7 hits, 2 walks. And this is what he's done in his last, 6 turns through the rotation fantasy-wise. 15, 17, 22, 21, 22, 15. Now, you name me another pitcher besides the 2 guys we mentioned as Cy Young Award winners who is as consistent as that. He's got Boston at home on Tuesday. So that's a positive start to me. So Boston's not playing as well as they were earlier, but even if Boston is a good hitting team, David Peterson appears to be matchup proof right now. So I really, really like what he's doing.
I like it too, to some degree. I just be a little scared. But speaking of a little scared, my next guy is owned in 0.4% of leagues. Adam Aller from the Miami Marlins came over from Cleveland, I believe. He does have Philadelphia this week on Thursday, so that's a little spooky. But here's why I still feel like he needs to be on the team. Since moving over to Miami, he's played in 3 games. His first game was against the Diamondbacks. Went 4.2 innings, gave up 5 earned runs, 4 walks, and 2 strikeouts for -3 points. But then he bounced back. Chicago Cubs, he went 5.2 innings, 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts for 21 fantasy points. And then he followed that up with going to San Francisco to go 6 innings, 0 earned runs, and 8 strikeouts for 23 fantasy points. I think he gives you a solid double-digit outing against Philadelphia even this week, maybe a 12 to 13, 14-point range against them this week. I think he's got his confidence where it needs to be as well. I like the kid, 3.31 ERA this season, and I think that he's a good pickup. A little dangerous against Philly for sure, but I think that he's still worth it, especially if you're just trying to fill starts this week. I like Adam Aller from Miami.
Okay, so I mentioned Detroit a little bit ago, and my ad from the Detroit Tigers right now is Spencer Torkelson. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Spencer Torkelson, that dude has burned me every single time he's come up to the major leagues. And so I kind of had that same reaction. But, okay, so 9 out of the last 15 games, hits, all right? He has 5 2 or more hit games in that same stretch. So he's swinging the bat a little bit, and I forgot to write down his roster percentage, but it can't be that high because I wrote him down here. But so
35%.
Okay, that's a little higher than I would have thought. But anyway, so if he's available in your league, you need a first baseman, and he's a left-handed swinger, so he'll be in the lineup most days. So I like Spencer Torkelson this time around, and hopefully he can stick around till the end of the year.
Yeah, hey, I put him on 2 of my fantasy teams, 2 of my 4 teams. He's currently rostered in my Yahoo league and in another league. So, yeah, I hear it, man. I needed a first baseman with Pasquantino going down, and he's the guy that I filled the void with on both of those teams. So, not a bad selection there at all. I've not done a lot of Brewers in my ads throughout this season. Kevin, you usually pick that up for me, but Aaron Savali, 14% owned, 14.4% owned in fantasy leagues right now. Starting pitcher for Milwaukee. His last outing against San Francisco, he went 7 innings with 7 strikeouts, 30 fantasy points. He actually struggled against Oakland, which is weird, but he had a good outing against Cleveland as well, 6 innings, 23 fantasy points. He had 21 against Cincinnati. So 3 of his last 4 have been 21 or better with fantasy points in a game. This week on Tuesday, he faces off against the St. Louis Cardinals. Let's face it, Cardinals aren't what they used to be. It's a good matchup for Savali, and he's been looking pretty solid as of late as well. So I like the matchup. I like the situation for him. Tuesday, September 3rd, against the St. Louis Cardinals. Aaron Savali from Milwaukee is my final addition of the week this week.
Okay, when you mentioned a Milwaukee pitcher, I thought for sure, because I've got one as well.
Okay.
That's Tobias Myers. I believe I mentioned him last week.
Yep.
And he's still at 23% rostered. Okay. Has a 3 ERA, 3.00, 1.18 whip, which is excellent. His last start at Cincinnati, 5 2/3 innings, 2 runs, 8 hits, 7 strikeouts. He's given up 3 or fewer runs in his last 9 straight starts. So that is as positive as you can get if you're looking for a matchup right there to get you a boost. I really like him coming into this week. And so hopefully, Jace, you're not listening to this, so you add him against me. All right. So I like him a lot.
The Brewers pitching staff right now has been pretty solid. D.L. Hall just came back from injury. He went up against Cincinnati on Friday. 7 innings pitched, 5 strikeouts, 0 earned runs, 27 fantasy points. Myers has been maybe the best pitcher in Milwaukee as of late. For him to only be 23% owned is pretty crazy. And, like you said, Colorado on Saturday, that's a good matchup there for sure.
It's a great matchup at home.
Yeah, Frankie Montas. His last 2 starts haven't been awesome by any stretch of the imagination, but he's going Friday against Colorado as well. And he had games against St. Louis that was phenomenal. Oakland and Cincinnati, he gave up runs. But at the end of the day, right now, these Brewers pitchers, I mean, I know it sounds like a homer pick, but and Freddie Peralta has not been what I hoped he would be this season for sure. But Myers, Savali, Montas, and DL Hall, and I don't know what DL Hall is going to do next. I don't know if he's going to get a start, get back in the rotation, or what they're going to do with him. They might go to a 6-man rotation coming down the stretch here of the season. If they do that, then DL Hall is going to be pitching as well. But all these guys have been pitching pretty decent. It's all about matchups right now for Milwaukee. They're going to put runs on the board. They're going to give support to their pitchers, and that's been a really positive thing as well. So I like all these starters right now for Milwaukee, honestly. And when I get to the weekend needing starts against Dan this week, I'm going to be looking at Milwaukee to make some additions for sure in that pitcher spot.
Well, I just looked up DL Hall, 1.4% rostered.
Yeah, there you go.
At Cincinnati, no runs, 4 hits, struck out 5, walked 1 in 7 innings, 23 fantasy points.
And remember, he's what they got for Corbin Burns. They got him, and they got Joey Ortiz, and so he's got at the very least potential. So the Brewers are hoping it's a whole lot more than that, of course. But yeah, so there is that for sure. All right, I want to come back to disappointments, something that I forgot to mention earlier, Kevin. Disappointments for this fantasy season. How about a Splash in the Cove fantasy baseball team owned by Dale Stover? He ends the year 500, 11-11 after sneaking out a win over Elizabeth this week. Not playoffs again. Dad, I'm disappointed. Really disappointed in your season this year. Expected a lot more from you. Surprises, we've already talked about it. Nate Nguyen. He did not make the playoffs either, but he went from the worst team in the league. He's going to finish at, I think, 13-9. I think he's taking down Chase tonight. 13-9. He's currently 2 points up on our number 1 team in the league. So there's that as well. Plenty of disappointments this year. Brent Radlinsky, thanks for participating. But you're not good at this. Elizabeth Lovato, thanks for participating. But I just looked forward to the easy win every time we matched up against you. So nonetheless, our playoffs are set, Kevin. It's going to be Chase Thornton hosting you, Kevin Wilson. And then Chase won the championship last year. He's incredibly tough, does a great job with his roster movement and things like that as well. And so that'll be a tough matchup. Looking forward to that one. And then the champ from 2 years ago, Dan D'Amico, has fallen to number 3 in our league after being the 2nd seed or 1 seed for most of the year. Me and Dan will be facing off this week as well in the start of the playoffs. So Kevin, you and me will be the only 2 coming in on win streaks. You'll be at a 3-game win streak. I'll be at a 4-game win streak. If Chase loses, which it looks like he's going to, that'll end his win streak, and Dan will come in on a 2-game losing streak. So that's interesting notes there for the fantasy playoffs. Schedule for this show. We will not have a show next week. We will take the week off, and then we will be back in 2 weeks, though, to premiere the Fantasy Baseball Championship. We'll talk all about that then. So 2 weeks from today, we'll be back for that episode, and then we'll do one more show 2 weeks after that. So we're down to only 2 shows left of this fantasy baseball season. Then let's see here, Kevin, what else you got going on this week?
Well, I have an article out there talking about playoffs and strategy, which could still be applicable. I was talking about getting to the playoffs, but it still applies. So it's out there on the fantasy Belly Up Fantasy website, and I will have an article, pretty much what we were just talking about with our award-winning choices. That'll be out there, and so who knows what's going to be coming in. No show coming up next week, so I might switch over to some fantasy football because, as we all know, the season starts on Thursday, and then on Friday in Brazil, of all places. Okay. Yes. But that's a disappointment because we don't have Peacock in this household. So we don't know what's going to happen right there. But anyway, I digress. But so I'm sure there'll be some fantasy football content coming around. So you'll definitely want to get to the Belly Up Fantasy website. It's there already. So check it out. And always, you can find me on Twitter, whatever the heck, at Kevin62 WILSEA.
Awesome. So football season's here, and I'm pumped about it.
It is.
I do have Peacock, so I'll be watching the Packers and Eagles on Friday night. I'm super pumped about this. I say that I have basketball practice Friday night. What was I thinking? Coaching basketball instead of watching the Packers. But I'll probably have my phone out while we're there at practice, watching those games, and I'll just tell the guys just keep running. Just keep running.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, left side. Okay. Now looking forward to that Thursday night, of course, kickoff. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. I'm planning on posting some fantasy football rankings on my social media pages this week. We've already covered those in the podcasts, but posting some graphics up from that. Let's see here. We are covering Eastern Kentucky football on the Sports Stove Local Hour. They had a game this week against Mississippi State. Did not go swell, but I got an article out about that. We'll be doing a local hour at some point this week. I don't know when yet. They had to travel back, of course, today from Mississippi State. I have reached out to my co-host who's on the team about when we can get it done this week, and have not heard back from him yet. So sometime this week, we're doing a local hour. We'll be recapping Mississippi State, previewing the Western Kentucky game. That being said, I'll be a guest on Topper Talk, a Western Kentucky football podcast this week as well. I'm not sure when that's dropping. We're recording tomorrow night. I'm not sure when that's dropping, but I'll be talking EKU and Western Kentucky on that show as well. Dad and I will be back on Wednesday night. Plus, we're going to be talking NASCAR. NASCAR playoffs start. NASCAR race is going on right now, final race of the regular season. Then playoffs start next week. So we'll be talking NASCAR with some guests as well, and college football and NFL football. On my Twitter page, X account, whatever you want to call it, at Sports Stove, I have pinned to the account the Sports Stove Pick'em contest, NFL Pick'ems contest. Each week you can pick winners, and we'll keep a tally all season long. And the winner will have a grand prize of $1 million or something similar. I haven't decided yet. But nonetheless, if you want to join it, it's free to join. You go to my Twitter account, at Sports Stove. It's pinned to my account. Click the link there to join. It's sponsored by Belly Up Sports, and we're going to have a fun time with that all season long, so make sure you get in on that as well. Then I got another article coming out later this week to preview Western Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky. You can follow those articles on bellyupsports.com. I'll be doing those throughout the year as well, and looking forward to that. So it's a busy time of year for sure. A lot of things happening. Make sure you keep up with it. The best way to follow it is social media, at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram. And we'll post out when these shows are coming out, because it's getting a little bit wonky right now with basketball season, my high school basketball season, and then the shows and seasons winding down and seasons starting up and all kinds of things. So we'll get it figured out, but nonetheless, we'll be there for sure. All right, Kevin, any closing thoughts on tonight's program?
Well, everybody have a great Monday, part of your 3-day weekend, and everybody be safe, and look forward to seeing everybody here. Appreciate everybody that comes in and follows us, and it's been a great year, and appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. And this has been our most listened to season of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We've loved seeing the growth of our viewership and listenership, and so we do thank you for that, of course. And we'll talk about that more probably on our last program. But nonetheless, we do appreciate you tuning in and listening as well. All right, make sure you check out bellyupfantasysports.com, Righteous Felon Jerky at righteousfelon.com, and SeatGeek at SeatGeek.com as well. It'll be 2 weeks, but until we see you again, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.
Everybody have a great week.